Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Break the Cycle, Rewrite the Narrative. Tonight's conversation is going to be before the gavel falls. So we'll be talking about early intervention, education, and the real-life impact of law on young people. I'm Kirsten with Bridges Beyond Bars, and I'm so glad that you're all here.
And I'm Sarah, co-hosting alongside Kirsten. We are excited to have you join this important conversation, whether you're tuning in live or catching the replay. These events are all about learning together and amplifying voices that matter. Before we dive in, we always like to know where everyone is joining us from tonight. Drop your city or your country in the chat so we can see the reach of this community.
Yes, we love to see how far these conversations travel. And speaking of other countries, we are honored to have Aysha here with us tonight. She's both a mother and a criminal solicitor, and she's leading important work in the United Kingdom to bring legal education into schools. So I will bring Aysha up.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Aysha, thank you so much for being here. Can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and the journey that brought you to this campaign?
Yep. So I'm criminal first courts and the responsibility all the way up. My compulsory, what we call.
Hang on one second. I have a delay. Okay, wait, you're breaking up. So you're on your phone, right? If you can pick it up so that the microphone is not touching any flat surface.
There we go. Is that better?
Perfect. You're going to have to run through everything you just said again. So that was a nice little practice.
Exactly. Well, I'm very sorry, everyone, then. But yes,
fine.
as you've heard, I'm from the UK. I have been a criminal defence solicitor for the last 17 years, 19 if you count the 2 years of training. And I attend courts in the police station daily, representing anyone from the age of 10, which is our age of criminal responsibility in the UK, up to adulthood. I'm also a mother of 2, as you've heard. My eldest is turning 10 very soon. And I've started a petition in the UK to try and get criminal law taught as compulsory within our curriculum as part of what we call our PHSE lessons.
Perfect. Excellent. And I think while it's really, and I think it's awesome that we have like an Australian, someone from the UK, and then someone from America on our panel tonight. I think it's just cool. I think, you know, that whilst you're in the UK, when we were talking about bringing this to our community and talking about it, that it's something that I think is not just UK, it's not just Australia, it is not just the US, it is a global thing that we're seeing, is that younger and younger people are entering the criminal justice system and they really don't know what they're getting themselves into. And so I think whilst you are really active in Britain and England, that these are conversations that can be happening everywhere to kind of trade information, see the comparisons and the differences. And maybe there'll be some people in here tonight that, you know, may be doing things already, like, and kind of trade where we're at with those sorts of things as well. Because I know in Australia, we don't get taught. I didn't learn criminal law until I went and paid for my bachelor's degree. So I had no idea. I wouldn't have known what to do if I had been arrested. Every time I get pulled over in the car and I'm 36, my tummy starts going in butterflies, and I wouldn't know what to say if they wanted to search my car or anything like that, you know. And I think that that's really important.
Well, this is the problem. Yeah. A barrier of law between our youngsters and what they know and what they learn.
Yes, exactly. I guess if we can kind of get into the questions, and I want to encourage people that are listening tonight and anyone that's watching on the replay, if you do have questions, as always, this is not we're going to talk to you and tell you just what we want you to hear. Aysha is here and we are here to obviously answer questions that might be relevant to you or questions that you have in pertaining to your community as well. And so this is designed to be an interactive community. So please don't feel like you can't come in and ask questions. We'll try. And if we miss it, please repeat it. We'll try and get to as many questions as we can. So I guess to your role as a mother, because you were saying that your eldest is almost 10, which is that legal age of culpability that you mentioned. So as a mother and a solicitor, how have your experiences raising children influenced the way you communicate legal concepts to young people and vice versa?
So it definitely weighs heavily. I suppose if you look at, for example, a nurse in an A&E department, they're going to be aware of trampolines and small things and running around a swimming pool. They're aware of the risks, and that's exactly the same for me. So unfortunately, my children are going to hate me if they don't hate me enough already. They're going to hate me as they get older, because in an ideal situation, there is no risk, but I live in the real world and I have the job for that reason. People get arrested and people do horrible, heinous crimes to people as well. So for me, there will be no phones for them until they are much, much older. There will be no sleepovers, but that's my job. My job is to protect them. But because I see it and I live it every day, I know it happens, and I need to protect my children from that because it's not worth the risk.
Yeah. And I think it's so easy to get caught up in it. I know, you know, myself and Sarah, I don't know about you when your children were younger, but I think my son being 13, he's got a little bit of a nicer experience growing up because, you know, I do have that experience within my job. And so he has these conversations a lot. And, you know, we were having this conversation offline about, you know, often I will take calls from men and women in, thanks for men and women in prison. And oftentimes, you know, these guys are saying to my son, go to school, don't go out after dark, and trying to impart their knowledge and wisdom onto him as a 13-year-old boy. If he doesn't want to go to school, they're like, go to school, man, like just try hard, like you don't want to end up like me, you don't want to end up in here, like this is not fun, this is not cool, like if someone says this to you, this is how you need to respond. And so I think, rather than being, oftentimes we are being so reactive, and it's too late when we're being reactive. We're not being proactive enough and teaching young enough. And it doesn't have to be, case law and legislation. It could be age appropriate. Definitely. Just like we do, consent and sexual education and all those things can be done in an age appropriate manner that is, why not start, like what, and this is kind of offhand because I just thought of it, like what age do you think you would want to introduce that to children?
I mean, for me personally, it has to be from, in the UK, we have year 6, which is the year before they go into secondary school, which is the age of 10, really, because obviously that's the age of criminal responsibility. But even at the end of 9, which is where my son is now, in the end of the day, we've got a situation where we're not educating the children for the ignorance that we're punishing them for the ignorance we've created, right? So they need to know things before they get to the age of criminal responsibility. It's no good for them to not know it and then they get arrested as, oh, we should have actually, as you said, we're just reactive rather than proactive, or maybe we should have taught our youth that. So for me, it's before they get to the age of criminal responsibility. But obviously that is quite a young age, still 9. And obviously every child is different. But again, it has to be age appropriate, but discussions need to be had.
Yeah. What about you, Sarah? What was your experience talking to your kids about it?
So mine was mostly like, my kids will tell you, they're like, she was strict. We couldn't have a cell phone. We couldn't have tablets. The outside was their communication. So it was more so to make them aware of predators. Like when you have a cell phone and you have a tablet and you're on it, we do the best we can as parents to monitor what children do. And nowadays you have a lot more parental control over the tablets. These tablets are coming with parental controls on them where you can set them up. It locks the kids out from going to certain sites and stuff like that. Back when my children were growing up, it was just coming into that age of Facebook and social medias and all these different outlets for children to get on. So for me, it was just, teaching them about, like, not everybody is your friend. Don't go up to everybody. It was that stranger danger, like we were taught. Like, don't approach people that stop their car and want to talk to you. Run away. Especially when kids can be so friendly. So it wasn't necessarily like what the laws are. It's how to protect yourself to get away from people that you don't know. It's this, developing the safe words, and who mommy talks to, so if somebody approaches you and says, I know your mommy and you've never seen them, so don't go with them, so it was more so teaching them about the predators, about they have no business talking to anybody. Even when they did get social media, I was on their page. And I'm like, what is this grown man doing talking to a 13, 14-year-old young little girl, talk about how sexy she is? You done lost your mind. So I'm policing their social media. And they would get embarrassed because I'm commenting like, this is a child, right? Stop. Like, and I would tell them they had to block. Don't just get all friends, because there's really nothing that, like we talked offline, like, if you do not know the jargon of the law, I can look at it. I can come up with a perspective of my own of it. Now, does that mean that I'm right? I may have a gist of what the law is. Like, I know if you do this, you shoplift, you do this and that, you can go to jail. They'll call mommy, and it's up to me if I want to come pick you up. Those type of things, because they'll hold them in security or they'll take them to the local jail and say, hey, they got caught for shoplifting. It's usually like a slap on the wrist sometimes for that type of stuff, but it was never going into detail. And I mean, my father was in law enforcement, so I grew up with it, but it was never nothing of in detail. Like I knew like certain crimes would get me to prison, right? I knew doing certain things would get me locked up. But at the same sense, you're talking about kids. You're talking about kids that if you do not really teach them, it's not like taught in an educational program, in a curriculum. You're talking about kids that feel like they're untouchable anyways, because their parents are held accountable for everything they do until they reach legal adult age. So everything goes back to the parent. Oh, it's your bad parenting. It's this, it's that. Granted, a lot of parents are just trying their best to survive and be there for their children. But I mean, as a teenager and a young kid, I thought I was untouchable. There's nothing nobody could tell me what to do, how to do it. I won't go to get in trouble. As long as I didn't get caught doing something, I was free. Right. So it's just, I just, there's really no conversation based around what law really is and the true consequences behind children's actions.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't taught by my parents. Like, they didn't have those conversations. And like you said, do we really know enough to be having those conversations? Aysha, you have the ability to have a lived and educational experience. We have lived experience because of the industry that we're in and the space that we're in. But the average person, especially if you've never been involved in the criminal justice system, you've never stepped foot in a courtroom. You've never stepped foot. Some of them have never stepped foot in a police station. And so how do you start to teach a child, I guess, Sarah, did you want to ask the next thing? Because this was something important that came up for me as well.
Yeah.
When you were talking. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Aysha, you've represented clients as young as 10. I mean, that's just it's unfathomable to believe that children as young as 10 are sitting in front of courts and the justice, right? But can you share a case that permanently shifted your view on the importance of early legal literacy and what that moment taught you about prevention versus the punishment?
I think for me, and it's what started the petition as well, was this a culmination of cases, because as you can, over 17 years, I've represented hundreds of children. But what I got frustrated with, which is the reason behind the petition, was the children that sat in front of me and actually said, but I didn't know what I was doing was wrong. It could be something so simple. I had, for example, I had a boy that his friend just told him to hold the drugs because the heat was on him at home. He didn't want to hold the drugs at home because the heat was on him. So he told my client to hold the drugs. My client was then, they had the property searched because of links with the phone, and they found the drugs. And my client said, well, why am I being arrested? Because they're not my drugs. I'm not doing anything with them. They're not mine. But he didn't appreciate that just holding them, even though they weren't his drugs, could get him arrested. I had a client as well, which was quite a pivotal point, to be honest, was he'd gone fishing with a friend. The brother of the friend turned up. There was a murder that took place, and because of our laws of joint enterprise, he was arrested for murder. He was 14. All he'd done was gone out to the fishing lake. He didn't have no knowledge of the murder or anything, but he was arrested. And as you can imagine, as you would imagine, it's the same in both of your countries and in any country, the interrogation process when you are arrested for a murder is a lot more strenuous. And like you say, these are young children. This child was 14. They're not psychologically developed by that stage. And then you can think about intent and their capacity. That's a whole nother conversation. But that has, some people suffer from post-traumatic stress from being arrested and being in that sort of situation. But I also represent the targeted children. So when I say that, it's the most vulnerable in our society. So a lot of the SEND children, so those with educational needs, they haven't been taught how to navigate the exploitation or the grooming that exists, because to them, they just want to be liked, or they're getting attention, or they don't know why this person is buying them things, because they think it's just because it's a friend, but actually they're being exploited. Now, if we're not teaching them that, how can they navigate that? And therefore they are getting in positions because they are holding things, they are doing things for people that they didn't know that it was wrong in the first place. And why? Because they're not being taught it. And it comes down to, yes, okay, parents can teach, but going back to what you were saying, Kirsten, not all adults know the law. And if you look at my polls on my social medias, I'm running polls and I'm asking questions about the law and multiple choice questions. And most of my followers are adults. And I think out of so far, maybe 15 polls that I've done, only one question has led to everyone getting the right answer. So even the adults can't teach the children. So what do we expect the children to do?
Yes, I agree. And the joint enterprise, so in Virginia, they call it concert of action, conspiracy to commit, and it is guilty by association. We will call it guilty by association or conspiracy to commit here in Australia. And I have seen it, especially with juvenile offenders that I've spoken to in the US. They'll say, oh, well, I was with a bunch of guys that were over 18 and they told me to just say that I did it because they would go easier on me because they were adults. But this boy is 14 or 15. And if they can prove intent, which like you're saying, in an interrogation process, I've read interrogations where people who are innocent admit to doing a crime, right, under duress. And so if they're not aware and the detective can prove intent and culpability and they believe that that child should be tried as an adult or given serious time and a criminal record, it's not just as simple as, oh yeah, you're a child, that someone died, but you'll just get a slap on the wrist. That's not how it works. So it is really significant, especially when you talk about this grooming and this exploitation, is that often these younger children that are coming through are used as the scapegoat. And like you said, they might just be going out and the intent by the people around them might be to commit a crime. And this person is just so unaware. And then all of a sudden the police are getting called and it's like, well, you were there. And they're like, well, I had no idea, but you were there. So you were complicit. Yeah. And all of a sudden we're in the process.
I mean, it's just like when your kids get older and they start driving, right? You want your kids to really be mindful of who they have in their vehicle because possession is 9/10 of the law. If something drops in your car, that's your vehicle. Therefore, you are getting punished for it. You can't put it on anybody else in the car. Possession is 9/10 of the law. So be mindful of what people are, who you're bringing into your vehicle, one, and then what they have. Like you have a right to know that's your vehicle and it's your life on the line, like, you know. So and a lot of people don't understand, a lot of young kids don't understand it, like you said, just holding the drugs. Like I'm not going to get in trouble for it, they're not mine, I'm just holding them. But here in the United States, that will be considered possession, 9/10 of the law. You know, you're in possession of a controlled substance, regardless if Joe down the street asks you to hold it. Now it's in your possession, you're going to get charged with it.
But also going back to the drug scenario, it's a lot of children don't understand that. I mean, I get a lot of clients that are taking drugs, and that's on them. They've chosen to take drugs and they know it's illegal, but they're taking drugs anyway. But they buy drugs as a group and they basically all go out and hang out at each other's houses and they will share the drugs. But then they're arrested for supply, because they don't realize that sharing it with their friends is supply. And obviously drug supply, I would imagine also in any country, is a lot more serious than simple possession. So, but they'd say, but it's my friend, that we just shared the drugs. No, you're giving them the drugs. So you are supplying. And then we've just hit a massive hefty sentence.
It's distribution here. So if you have a certain amount of weight, it's considered distribution. And depending on how
and
much,
you'll get done for a possession and intent to distribute. Yeah, they'll hit you with both.
Double whammy.
Depending on how much you have, depends on how long you're going to get locked up. But that really goes depending on what judge you get here in the United States, because there's people that have drug charges, no nonviolent charges, who are doing life in prison.
Yeah.
So, or more than somebody that does have a violent charge. So it just really depends here. So it's a lot to really dig into. So children know, like, your whole life can be taken away for holding a pound of marijuana for your friend.
I mean, in the UK, we do divert a lot of children from the criminal justice system as much as possible. We do have a very good youth justice system here in that sense. So for most first-time offences, unless they're very serious, would get what's called a referral order. But the whole point is we need to stop them being arrested in the first place. It doesn't matter if they get a slap on the wrist in court. They've had to be arrested. They've been in cuffs. They've been in a police station forever how long. They've had their parent or the appropriate adult or guardian come down. They've been shipped off to court to another day. They've had to then instruct a solicitor, speak to a solicitor in a very foreign environment, in a very formal environment still. So even with the lower consequences for youths early on, it's the fact that we need to stop them being arrested. Now, if they knew that sharing drugs with their friends is going to be a criminal offence, then they won't do it. Well, they may not do it. And then if they do it, they've had that knowledge. At the end of the day, if people know the law and they still want to break it, then the criminal justice system is the right place for them. But we can't punish children for not knowing something that we're not teaching.
Yeah,
exactly.
I agree. And that's the thing. I had a conversation this morning with somebody that said, we've all got choice, right? And I don't think it's as simple as that. I think at the same time, the choices and opportunities that we are given determine what choices we can make. And so if we're all starting on an uneven playing field, like you're describing, if children aren't educated, then how culpable are they for the decision if they're completely ignorant through no fault of their own? So it's like, if I didn't know, and the I didn't know doesn't fly in a courtroom, right? I didn't know that me holding the drugs, it wasn't mine. The drugs doesn't have a name on it. It doesn't have someone doesn't have ownership over those drugs. It's whoever has it in their pockets, right? And so it is a manner of going, what can we do to make sure that we're educating and allowing and equipping them with the information to make the choices with all of the information. That's the difference, right? It's going, okay, the choice is still going to be there. We're not trying to get rid of the circumstances. Children do all of these risky things, and that's part of being a teenager, is doing risky things and doing drugs if you want to do drugs, underage drinking, all of those sorts of things. But being equipped with the appropriate information to make a decision is part of it. And I think that we underestimate just how much children can absorb and learn, because if it's done correctly, there's no reason that they can't know. I guess for me, absolutely, they're sponges. They can remember things that I forgot in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. So I guess that brings us to our next part. So in leading a petition like this to bring criminal law into classrooms, what has been your biggest form of resistance that has surprised you in terms of, have you faced it from teachers? Have you faced it from parents, policymakers? And how do you change then those objections into an encouraging conversation where you can try and persuade them?
So I think that would be twofold. So my first bit of resistance is from the government itself. So basically what I wanted to do was get support from our members of parliament, so our MPs who basically live and work in the House of Parliament, but we have a lot of red tape here. So MPs can't support or help anyone unless you're their constituent, which basically means every area, every sort of county has their own MP, and you have to reach out to that MP and ask them to do stuff for you within Parliament. So that's just one person. And I think that's terrible. So what I've been doing in response to that has been emailing them all anyway. There's hundreds of them, and I've emailed every single one of them. But rather than appealing to them as a member of Parliament, I'm asking them, I know the situation with the red tape, but I'm appealing to you as a human being, and possibly a parent who's got children as well. We have a problem with our educational system here. This needs to be attacked. And most, unfortunately, have been, oh, sorry, I really appreciate what you're doing. I think you're doing amazing work. Keep going, but I can't do anything anything for you. But I did have one MP come back, and he got me into a connection with the Department of Education. I was able to send my views to them. They then allowed me to contact the review for the curriculum that's going on at the moment. So I was able to do that. So my response to that was to persist and appeal to their better nature. But the other one has been some parents, and that is, some parents say it's not for the schools to teach, it's for the parents to teach the children. And that one quite surprised me. And I'm glad that I do the polls that I do, because again, as we said earlier, the adults are not getting the law right. So it is wrong to say, let the parents teach the children, because they don't know the law sometimes. Some of these children's parents are criminals themselves. So we have children just emulating the behaviour of the parents, and those parents don't care that they don't know the law. They maybe encourage them to assist them in criminal activity anyway. So that's not that child's fault either. But the most important one is that everyone seems to think children have parents that are around. A lot of my clients are children in care. So whether they're foster or they're in some sort of young hostel, they don't have the parent around to teach them. And again, this is not their fault. So they don't have an adult to look up to. They don't have an adult to educate them. So that's what I then go back to and respond to the parents or the adults that say that. But then we have, I love this one. My child wouldn't get involved in this. Well, again, I'm sorry, there is a reason that I've done this petition, and that is because I sit in front of that parent who is crying their eyes out to me, not understanding, looking dumbfounded at their child who sits next to them, saying, how can you be so stupid? How can you have got involved in this? I don't know why we're here. So unfortunately, it happens to the best parents and the best children still, because like I say, it's not just a bad person that gets involved in crime. Sometimes it's circumstance, but also sometimes it's peer pressure. And this is why they need to be taught. So unfortunately, to those parents who say, well, don't want my child taught it because he's not going to get involved, he or she's not going to get involved. Unfortunately, they will, because I see it every day. So that's what I say to them. And hope that they don't. Yeah. Fair play to you if you've taught your child and they stay out of crime. That's what we want to do, but it doesn't always happen.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. In the event that something happens that might not even be something within their control, like we're talking about, that, just being around people that are doing the wrong thing. You just chose the wrong friends to hang around with that night. Yeah. Yes, your child wasn't the one who decided to, but unfortunately he was around or in an environment that put them in the situation. We still want them to be equipped with the knowledge to know what to do in that situation. Assuming that it's never going to happen is ignorant.
Exactly.
At best, right?
Because our job as a parent is to protect. And again, it's about being proactive, not reactive. It's too late when they've already been arrested. Get the knowledge in them now, and then let them choose to disregard it if they need to.
Yes. I mean, but that to me, that goes back to our choice, right? Even as adults, when we lack the knowledge of something, we're not going to just jump in head first. If we don't know that water is hot or if it's cold, we're going to test it and to get the knowledge and then make a choice, right? Yeah. So it's the same thing with the children. Like, giving them knowledge, like age-appropriate knowledge to what they are able to understand, like break it down to them. My husband likes to say, you can't give children a whole apple. You have to break it down into applesauce. It's easier for them to digest. And it's just like a little metaphor that he uses, which makes sense. I cannot give a child the apple that I'm giving you because you can take that. I have to give them the applesauce from that apple because it's just easier for them.
Exactly.
So it just hang on, because we have come down on Facebook, so I need to reload us.
That's okay.
I don't know why it says we're having trouble streaming to Facebook. This may be an issue on Facebook's end,
because we're still live on YouTube.
Yeah. But I just got a message saying, what happened? It said it ended.
Yeah, I see it up in there.
This has never happened.
never.
Yeah, luck of the English.
No.
It might be a topic that Facebook doesn't like because we're live on YouTube, live and strong. I'm watching it now, so Facebook's probably like, we don't like this topic. We're gonna end you.
We will not be defeated. We will post it on Facebook.
We can always share the YouTube live to the Facebook.
Let me see if it. Yeah, that's why we do the recordings, right? It's
still doing it. Maybe if you get rid of that third one that's up there, the B, because that looks like it has that little exclamation point. Do you see it on your side?
I just reloaded it.
Because I'm still
that one shouldn't be doing anything, but it's just going live from ours.
Why is it still on my side? Why can't it remove? People on YouTube are probably like, what in the world are they talking about?
I know, right? People on YouTube are like, technical issues. All right, so it's back on. Okay. I'm very sorry because I didn't want anyone to miss anything. So I'm like, because there were people quite active in the comments. I know you can't see them, Aysha, but people are having really great conversations about their children and stuff. So I didn't want them to miss out or anything like that. But we are back live.
Okay. But all I was saying,
maybe it got flagged for sensitive content. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying.
We've talked about some.
We're not allowed.
We've talked about some hectic stuff. I mean, we've talked about some crazy stuff on these things, and
I don't know what it is about it tonight, but it's okay. But before I go into the next question for you, I was just saying, choice is based off of knowledge you have of something you're getting ready to go into, right? Even as adults, there is always a risk at making a choice, right? It's just how grave of a risk is it based off of the knowledge you have. So given the children they need, you might not have such a greater risk of committing a crime if they really know what's going to happen, if it's laid out for them. We could just tell kids, you do this and the cop's going to come, and then that'd be the end of it. But okay, the cop comes, then what? Where do I go after the cop gets me? How long did I sit there for? So it's the knowledge that they have, explaining it.
How can you make a choice when you don't know what the choices are? That's what it comes down.
Exactly. And like you're saying, some of these children don't have parents that can come down to the police station.
Absolutely.
And so, the police will say, we know the Miranda rights and you have the right to remain silent. A child might just sit there and start talking themselves around in circles, right? And say, oh, it wasn't me, it was Johnny, da 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 da. And all of a sudden they've just said all these things.
Yeah.
And could be incriminating themselves.
I'm always the most nervous when I have a youth because, and I tend to have conversations without the parent being present first, as is their right, only because they're going to lie. Some of them will lie when the parent is there, and I can't do my job well if they're just going to lie about the situation. But children panic. Children will try to protect other people. So youths are the harder ones to represent, to really get to the bottom of actually what went wrong or what happened. So I'm always most nervous when it comes to youths.
Absolutely. Definitely, because a lot of times they don't want to say what they've done in front of the parents because they're like, I gotta go home to them at night. If I'm going home tonight, I gotta go home to mom and dad, or mom or dad.
They're not scared of the police, they're scared of the parent.
right. I know I was, but it is. So they do lie, and it definitely can make your job more difficult because it just doesn't look good in the eyes of the court, in front of the justice. And they're going to be like, okay, you lied. Why did you lie? Because they're not really, people forget they were teenagers too. Were you always truthful when your parents were in the room? No.
Right.
So they just don't.
I'm sorry, Rue. Rue said what happened. We don't know. We don't know what happened. We think we might have said a word that Facebook didn't like. So we don't know what word it was. But Yeah, we stepped away for a minute too. Yeah. He said I stepped away for a minute. I'm like, yeah, so did we. So did we.
So sorry. But Aysha, your campaign aims to help young people recognize exploitation and grooming. How do you strike the right balance between equipping them with enough information to protect themselves and avoiding instilling fear or mistrust?
Yeah. So obviously you don't want to go too far because you don't want to make them so fearful of something. So it does need to be age appropriate. But at the same time, the truth hurts, right? But at least they know the truth and they have that knowledge. But when you think about what is fear, so fear is a psychological response to a perceived danger or threat. But we have that in us because that is our survival mechanism. So that is what helps us and keeps us safe. So for me personally, I want my children to fear committing offences. I want my children to fear the consequences so they don't do it in the first place. So I appreciate, yes, you don't go around showing gang initiation videos or pictures of murdered bodies or stab wounds. Do you see what I mean? You don't go that far. It has to be age appropriate, but factual information. But there needs to be an element of fear because that's what if there was no fear of the consequences of committing crime, then what's the point of it all? Because they're just going to do it anyway. It's those people that do continually get arrested, the prolific offenders, they're the ones that don't have the fear. They don't care anymore. So I want my child to fear the consequences so they don't do it in the first place, just like I didn't. I've never touched a drug in my life, and I can hold my hand up to that. Because one, my dad was a biologist, so I did see those images. I did see those pictures of addicts, and I wouldn't be able to trust myself to fall into that dark spiral. But I was fearful of drugs, so I didn't touch it. I didn't smoke because my granddad had cancer. Well, Nan got breast cancer as well, but he was a prolific smoker. I didn't like it. I was fearful the damage I was going to cause to myself. So that fear stopped me from doing that. So you get some parents saying, oh, you're going to scare the children. Well, in a way, good to a certain extent, because the fear is what protects us, because that is our survival mechanism. That's why we have the emotion of fear. But like you say, we have to do it carefully. It has to be age appropriate and relatable.
I think the issue we have is that so many people glamorize crime.
Yeah.
And so we have to do the fear side to counterbalance that. You know, there's a few people in our community that talk about these, you know, love after lockup and 60 days in and, you know, those real life prison shows, when in reality, you know, it's not what you see on the TV. When the big rappers rap about going to prison, some of them have never even been. Right. And so they're glamorizing this lifestyle, and these kids are getting this really positive approach of what crime and deviance and prison and jail looks like. And so maybe we do need to be like, you know, and this is what makes me sad. And like I was saying with my son, you know, the guys will be on the phone and they'll be like, this is what I have to deal with every day. This is what I can't just leave and go outside when I want to go outside. You're lucky that you've got what you want. Oh, GTA 5 just came out. Well, I haven't played since GTA 2, right? Things like that are age appropriate for him to understand that, yeah, you might see prison and jail on the TV, but that's not what it's like, buddy. That's not what it's like. Let me tell you what it's like. And Uhuru has popped this. Uhuru is a returning citizen as well. He did some time in prison, and he said YouTube is loaded with content that supports the love of, I'm not going to say that word just in case it gets flagged, but and this stuff is attacking our youth, right? And it is, you know, these pictures that glorify. And I worry, you know, I've sat in the car with my son and he'll sing along to rap songs and I'll say, do you even know what that means? No, then don't say it. Don't say it. Okay. Like it's not cool. It is not funny. It is not something to aspire to be. This is the way that society has made and created this narrative that is targeting our most vulnerable, like you were saying, our most vulnerable population, which is our children and people that are intellectually, mentally disabled. Maybe they don't have mum or dad around. Maybe dad's in prison. Maybe one of the parents has passed. Maybe they're in foster care, and so they're already vulnerable. And then we know that a child can be easily persuaded when they are vulnerable. Like our measures of protecting ourselves are down, and then couple that with the wrong education being out there, so they think, oh man, like I'm going to have all these cool clothes and I'm going to get all these girls and I just need to get one of these things that can take people's lives.
But it's like everything
not
with online.
realizing
It's just unrealistic as well. Because they see these groups doing their drill music or whatever with all these gold chains around there, but they don't realize that that's been lent to them by family or whatever it may be, or come through from crime. I had a client who was a rapper. He didn't have the weapon, if I can say that, but it was a shadow of something they created out of cardboard. It looked like in the video that he had the weapon. So you've got the other children watching that video thinking, oh, he's cool, he's got that weapon. No, he's smart, he's got a cardboard cutout making you think it's a weapon. And they've just glamorized that for you. So it's unrealistic. It's like anything on TikTok and Facebook and stuff. All these photographs, they're filtered and changed, and it's all well and good, these people doing these videos in the situation where it's in a controlled environment. It may look public, but there's people on the watch and stuff like that. That doesn't happen in real life. So it's unrealistic, but they believe what they see. It's just dangerous.
I think too here, because, just thinking about all this, you hear, and it's still, it just baffles me how I still see adults say this about prison. Oh, they got it easy. They got AC and heat, 3 hot meals a day, free cable TV, free internet. Who wouldn't want to go and get taken care of? But that's where that like real huge gap of that misunderstanding of what prison's really like. Like these meals that they're being fed aren't for human consumption, for one. 2, most of the prisons that people are locked up in don't have central air and heating. They're in an oven during the summertime baking. They're freezing during the wintertime, depending on where they're at in the United States and probably other countries. They're horrible conditions, unlivable conditions. And then most of them, they're sleeping on a metal grate for a bed because their mattress is maybe a centimeter to an inch thick with nothing to it. So you yourself as a parent is glorifying prison as this place to where you don't have to pay anything and you get to go live in this miraculous environment. So when I see that, I've seen it on post from adults. Like, I don't understand what they're complaining about. They get all this and the taxpayers pay for it. But have you ever stepped inside one? You have a loved one that's lived through it to come home and tell that story. It's horrifying how they do glorify it in so many different aspects.
Exactly. But I mean, also we're talking. Sorry, Sarah. We're talking about children, right? So the youth offenders institution that we have, obviously I think you have juvenile hall in America. I'm not too sure about Australia, but
juvenile detention.
So we have youth offenders institution, YOIs, and some children think this is a place for me to hang out with my mates. No, this is where gang initiation starts. This is where gang rivalry is rife in these prisons. But also, what is sad, what I see is very sad in this country, is that the criminal justice system is very delayed over here now. So you could have a trial and a conviction that takes 3 years. So someone could commit an offence at the age of 16 and be sentenced, after they're convicted, be sentenced as an adult. So even though they were 16 at the time, had they been dealt with at that time, they would have gone to youth offenders. They are now going to an adult prison, and that's a game changer. No youth needs to be in an adult prison. But that's where they will go. If at the time they are sentenced, no matter when they commit it, they will go to an adult prison, and they don't understand that. and they don't understand it's a 3-year delay, so they think they're okay going to juvie or to youth offenders when actually it's taken so long. You're now treated as an adult. Off you go to the big block.
Yep.
And here in the
Exactly.
US, they can charge a child as young as 14 as an adult, right at 14.
Yep.
You won't even step foot in any juvenile detention center if the prosecutor gets it pushed to have that person tried as an adult. They're tried as an adult in criminal court and sentenced to an adult prison. They do not go in any type of detention center.
Wow. Yeah. And we can be tried as an adult if it's an offence where they're linked to an adult, and we can't what we call sever them. But they would always be sentenced as a youth. So that's crazy. That from 14. Wow.
And you can imagine like those children going into those prisons. They see this child that's underdeveloped, tiny, and they almost have to pave the way, and it's not a very nice experience for them growing up in those formative years in prison, essentially, whether it's juvenile or not. I mean, when we're putting people together and you're already very vulnerable, and then you go into an environment where everybody has the same sort of situation, and it's another conversation for another time, but we're not doing the best at rehabilitation and training and programming in these prisons. And so what happens is that they're not necessarily coming out and making different choices. They're going in there and continuing to do the wrong thing, and then coming out and doing the wrong thing, and probably or sometimes ending up going to prison anyway. That criminal behavior doesn't deter them from committing further criminal behavior as an adult. I think this question is super relevant because obviously we do have people from differing perspectives, and we've touched on this. What role do you believe, obviously, and this is a big one. Let me just read this comment from who I suffered under those same conditions at Southampton Reception Centre back in 1999. They had faulty hot water heaters, so in the winter months, the shower would get cold really fast, and in the summer months, there was no air conditioning. So I had to learn how to write, and Congressman Bobby Scott was who I wrote about this issue, and that problem was rectified thereafter. So, yeah, he's talking about the conditions in prison being, awful. And so he had to learn how to write in prison and approach Congress people and people in government to try and get these conditions changed. But we're still fighting for this. We just had summer in the US, in Virginia. There is a handful of prisons that have air conditioning, and the rest just sit there and suffer with one tiny little fan on them. And so it's definitely not somewhere where you aspire to be.
In our older London prisons, we have rats and cockroaches everywhere.
Yeah, London prisons are like the original sort of like big stone looking, institutions. Like they're not modern at all. And a lot of ours here are as well, incredibly hot and incredibly cold. They were like Australia was a convict colony. And so all of the people from Britain that they couldn't fit in their prisons were shipped over here, and we were used as a storing place for them. And so they were all built out of bricks and mortar. To be honest, no one's coming up for election going, oh, if you put me in power, I'm going to upgrade our prisons with your tax money. No one's saying that, right? No one's selling that as a selling point to what they're going to do when they come in. And so it's at the bottom of the barrel in terms of the money that's being allocated to these prisons to make the environment any better than what it is now.
Yeah, and it's not to be a hotel, right? But the people need to know what the reality is again, because they don't think it's an easy ride. So they need to know these things, but they're not taught about that. They don't do prison visits anymore. We don't even do police station visits. We used to do that in schools, where you would go to a police station and go in the cells. There are some amazing organisations in the UK that do that, but we're talking a very small handful of schools or classes that get to do that, to experience it.
It's not enough. So when we talk about who is going to be responsible for delivering this information, obviously we've spoken about parents not being aware enough. I mean, I did 8 classes in my degree as criminal law, and I don't think there's questions my son asked me. I'm like, I don't know. I can't tell you, So what roles do you think people play? Is it practicing lawyers? Is it police? Is it youth, nonprofits? Who would deliver this legal education? And how can we, make sure that these partnerships work together for long-term impact?
I mean, the problem we have now is it's all piecemeal. People are doing their own little bit in their own way, but most of the work is coming from the underfunded, overburdened, voluntary or charitable organisations that are trying to do their bit because they can see the problem. That's where I'm getting all my support, is those that see it and are trying to do something about it. Whether or not you have police going to schools, they do that already for like online stuff, but I do find that a lot of youngsters, especially in today's world, there is a mistrust for police. And of course, a policeman is going to tell you not to commit crime. The reason why these amazing organisations and people do so well talking to the children is because they've got lived experience. A lot of them, like one of your people watching now, they've lived it. So they can talk about those that have been to prison, those that have committed offences, talking about the dangers, talking about what it's really like. They're the ones that really resonate with the youth. But again, they're just voluntary organisations, so we can't do that. So we have to do it as part of our curriculum. It has to be in schools. Now, the only way to do that is by the teachers, unless the government want to pay for professionals like me or these organisations to go in, because how else are they going to function? So either it needs to be funded by the government to have external people in the know coming in, or we need the teachers to teach it. But I do get some backlash sometimes from teachers. Now, the point of my petition is to give them guidance. In the end of the day, there's a reason why it takes 7 years to become a criminal defence solicitor. It's a profession. It takes a lot of time and a lot of skill. I'm not expecting the teachers to be able to teach this. But what I would like to do is, if we can get it within the schools, is the professionals, those on the front line, to be able to give guidance on what to teach and how to teach it, because they need that help. I'm not expecting teachers to know this already. It's like if you want to know, if you've got a sore leg and you want to know what's wrong with your sore leg, you don't go and ask teachers, you don't go and ask the public, you go to your doctor. We know what the problem is. We know what needs to be taught, as in lawyers and solicitors. So you need to come to us and ask us what that is, and then we can then guide them and be part of that implementation and make it a lot easier for teachers to teach that. But yeah, as I said, either government to fund it for organisations to go in and pay them to do that work, or teachers to teach it, but with the help of professionals guiding them on what to teach.
Yeah, I think it's two-pronged. Like lawyers and attorneys, I don't necessarily agree with police going in. I think we've tried that. And I think education isn't really, I think, something that they consider important from what, and not necessarily their role. That's not why they get into law enforcement. Exactly. And so I see a lot of, we have a man in here, Khalid Karim, and he does a lot of work with the youth. But we have to remember that that's all volunteer based. And so Khalid also needs to pay his bills. And so this needs to happen. And like you're saying, so we can have attorneys going in, we can have, ex-public defenders. We have a group in Virginia called Justice Forward VA. And they are a bunch of ex-public defenders that now work in the space to try and introduce new legislation based on what they know. People like that have experience within, that first point of call when children are arrested and can't afford to pay for private representation. It is the public defenders that are going in, people like yourself that are going in and seeing what's really happening here and how unknowing children actually are. And so you can have it from both approaches. You can have it from that lived experience, but then you can have someone that goes in and says, this is what it's like now. And this is what you're going to get asked. This is what's going to happen. And then you have the person coming in and going, prison is not cool. Criminal behavior is not cool. Like these guys that are in these rap videos, their chains are fake. Like they weigh 500 grams. And so I think it's multiple responsibility. But like you're saying, the funding has to come from the government. It has to be a priority.
Even as a solicitor, obviously, your firm is not going to allow you to go and do free work. I mean, in my old firm, I did do that. So I did pro bono work. I went into schools to try and help. But what's fascinating, Kirsten, is that they love it. They love being taught criminal law because it is so relatable and it is enjoyable. It's exciting. It's interesting. That's why I've been doing it for so long. It is interesting. But because they can relate it to their lives and what they're going to experience as they navigate adulthood, they listen. And when we enjoy learning, we learn. So it needs to be done. And if it is the professionals, they know they can trust that information because we see it. We're in the real world. We deal with it every day. It's not a hypothetical situation or, so they will listen.
Yeah, I think, a lot of the times if a teacher comes out, you might get these kids that might say, well, what do you know? Like, what would you know? And so even if a teacher is armed with information, we also run the risk of these kids might have more questions. And so if that's not part of what the teacher's been briefed on to deliver in that curriculum, how do they answer follow-up questions? Oh, that's the extent of what's on my list. So sorry, I can't help you with the rest. Then you have a disengaged child.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
The child's like, well, you're not telling me what it is I want to know or what's applicable to my circumstance. And so now I really just don't care because you're just reading off a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Like kids aren't silly, like they're not silly. They're intelligent little creatures. And so I think, it's got to be a multitude of, and it has to be set in a way that we know that all children are being given access to the same information.
Exactly. It
and
shouldn't
given the
come
same
down
opportunity.
to gender, race, socioeconomic factors. Every child has to have this information and be given that in however they want to deliver it. Every child needs to, and it's not done. Yes, we have in schools, don't carry knives, don't do drugs. Try not to use certain words now. But it's not enough. That's the tip of the iceberg in terms of criminal offending and what I deal with. It's not just about that or consent. It's so much more. And then so they're not taught enough. That's the problem.
Yeah. If you're put in a position where you're at a party with some friends and someone hands you a weapon, what can you do? If you do take the weapon, what can happen?
Exactly.
Even teaching these kids, how to say no. Like they say, just say no. Sometimes it's not that easy.
No, it's not.
Sometimes children can't just say no, right? And so singing these songs and preaching these words, just say no. Okay, what if you can't? What if someone has a weapon and you feel that you're at risk? What then? And so if I do make a choice based on fear, am I going to know what to do, what to say, and when not to talk if things do go bad? And that's so relevant.
And also who to turn
everyone
to.
needs.
Yes. Who to turn to. So when that pressure is
safe.
Who can I go to explain about the situation? If I can't go to my family because that's the reason I might be committing crime in the first place. And we're talking about the innocent side of it as well. I mean, it's not really innocent, but you've got a single mum that's got a family of 4 children to raise. She's struggling. That child wants to go out and sell drugs. It's quick money, and that's what they've been told to, and they've been exploited to do that. But if they don't want it, what are their other options? If I need money for my family, but I am 14, what can I do? I can't go to mum because she's going to tell me to be a good boy and stay at home. Who can I go to with these real life financial and mental health issue problems? Who can I go to? So these mentors. And again, it's just, there's amazing charities out there, but it's just, again, access. They don't know where to go. Even to provide them with the resource of where to go so that everyone has a list of, like, it was the Samaritans or whatever, if you've got it in your own countries, but where do they go when they need help? Or they're in a point of crisis. They can't call the police. They don't trust them. They don't want to make it a family issue. So where do they go? This is the other thing that we need to be teaching them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So someone said, it's interesting that there are weapon detectors. They walk through at school and there are drills for school shootings, but not lessons about legal factors that go with it or what to do in other daily instances that could occur.
Again, it's reactive.
Reactive. We want to get the weapon before it comes into the school, but we're not addressing why the child has the weapon in the first place.
Exactly.
And that's the key. And someone had said on the previous live, Nicole at Benning Bars had said that's the thing. We're not asking why or addressing the why. We're just going, what did you do?
Yeah.
What did you do? And that's that reactive questioning rather than being proactive and going, how can we change before that child even puts their hands on the weapon, before that child even takes that little bag of drugs? Where can we do it there? Because once they get involved, the criminal legal system is such a black hole. Like it is, it's hard to get out of, even if you're in juvenile and you do your time in juvenile, you can then be put on probation. and then be monitored. And if you do even the slightest thing wrong, you're back there where you were, and you're being even more heavily scrutinized and looked at than you were before. And so, like, it's too late then. It's too late. Gosh.
My thing with this is we have to pay attention. As adults, we have to pay attention because children give us signs that they're not doing well mentally. They do. And you know, a lot of people will sweep it under the rug and say, oh, they're just being kids. You remember when you were a kid and you did this. But these things, these little things are leading up to these really big things that these kids, once it happens, they're so scared because now mom and dad or, you know, one parent can't get them out of it now. It's not all about talking yourself out of the situation anymore. Now, what am I going to do? I can't, as a single parent, I can't afford legal counsel. So who are you going to get? You're going to get a public defender who is paid by the state. So basically working for the state. Are they really going to do a good job at defending my child? Because I can't afford $15,000 to drop on an attorney for a retainer to make sure my child gets out. You know, so there goes to being going down to the ones that don't have access to certain things, certain resources, right? For the help, for the education. Because, you know, unfortunately, you know, I've seen it firsthand, kids being bullied and the teachers and the staff at the school, even once it's brought to their attention, it's not rectified. Nothing is done. It's usually the child who was being bullied finally had enough, stood up for themselves, and they're being suspended, while the instigator and the bully that does the bullying constantly is still remaining at school. So then you got children saying, well, if I do the right thing and walk away and tell an adult, nothing's still being done. So now I have to take action in my own hands because I'm tired and I finally broke because nobody wants to listen. Now that I've done all this, now I got your attention, but now you want to do something to me when I've been crying out for help the entire time. So we really, I think it's teach the law, but we have, it's so much more of a broader subject.
So much.
It's just so much. I think people just overlook kids and act like it's not, kids don't go through certain things, but we see it all the time now on social media. Unfortunately, kids, I don't know the correct term. I don't want Facebook to say it, but unaliving themselves. You see it at young ages because they can't take certain things and they don't have an outlet. We have to provide our children with outlets, one, to learn, two, and I think the most important, to feel safe. To feel absolutely safe.
This is why a lot of children carry. It's not that they intend to use them; they're holding them to feel safe because they think all the other children are carrying knives. And I think there's a statistic out there that actually in the UK there's not that many. So it's just the idea, the belief that others are carrying, so I need to carry, and that's when fatalities happen.
Right.
Yes. Same thing happens in the US and the same thing happens here. The whole thing is it's rather be them than me. And so all be prepared. And so gone are the days of fist fights, you know, like now it's it all comes down to this communication that is out there, and these negative glamorizations are so powerful and so strong, and the alternative of really giving the proper education isn't as loud and strong. Right? The media is so powerful and has so much investment, but the prevention is quiet, and we're not putting any money into it. So
and this the thing. So to the UK government, they need to pay attention, because the way it works over here is that every child gets legal aid. So it's not a choice of private or whether you have a public defender service. We're just all criminal defence solicitors. I do private work or legal aid work. That youths automatically get legal aid. So we're not educating the children. They're getting arrested, and we're paying for that privilege then to put them through the police station and the court system. Because they're on legal aid. So we're paying to punish them, even though we haven't. It's so ironic. It's just crazy. So by trying to reduce the amount of crime by education, you're going to reduce the burden on the legal aid purse as well, amongst many other things. Education is not the only answer. Ease of access to certain weapons and drugs, etc. Socioeconomic factors. I know it's not the only answer, but it is a factor and it has to be considered.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, we could go on for days about all the things that we can do for youth,
Absolutely.
but it's obviously, you know, we all operate in different areas. So
yes. And it's crazy to see the similarities in the different countries, but also the drastic difference on how the courts and justice systems are ran and conducted. But lastly, I would like to know, how will you measure, Aysha, the long-term success of your initiative beyond reductions in youth crime statistics? What qualitative indicators matter most to you?
So long term, the ultimate success will be that I get 100,000 signatures on my petition, which is what I need to get it debated in Parliament. So that would be the long term goal and the ultimate success, because once it's debated in Parliament, we can actually make a change to the curriculum. But I am realistic. I don't know 100,000 people, and I'm grateful to people like yourselves who have given me your platforms to put this on, to try and get as many as possible. So even though I know now I probably won't get the 100,000, no matter how many signatures I get, I can then use that to go back to my MP to say, look, this is what is affecting the UK. This is how much support we've got. Doesn't matter that I haven't got 100,000 that you say as a Parliament we need. It is an issue. Let's have that discussion. I can use that then to also go back to the Department of Education and talk about the curriculum review again. So that's the ultimate success. But to be fair, I've already had a lot of successes that I'm happy with. Like I say, I've already had the connection to the Department of Education. So I've sent my views to the curriculum review. I have on social media platforms, I've been educating obviously parents about certain parts of law, and I've been getting thankful messages. So I didn't know that. Thank you so much. But a success to me is just one parent talking to their child about criminal law and what is right and wrong. If that can stop one child being arrested, then that to me is a success. So not just the criminal stats, it's just parents and adults having discussions with the children, opening the conversations and learning about the law. So the messages, basically get through. So I've already had those successes, and I'm really pleased with that. I'm pleased with my achievement already, because it is just little me. But obviously, ideally, the ultimate success is to get the change, get the curriculum sorted, get this taught. But we will see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that's the thing for me as well is, I always said, if I can just impact one life, and we don't get to see the flow on effect. But for example, we've had people here in tonight watching this, and then people will come back and watch the replay, will watch it on YouTube. And if they have the conversation with 3 people or one person and that person, and it's that flow on effect of conversations that might not be happening unless our conversations are taking place. And so, yes, your end goal is getting this into the curriculum, but we know that it can be a long process. We know that it takes time for these big changes. And so if we can start to make these smaller changes and get people more aware, then that is a win in itself, like you were saying, and little old you, I know, sometimes we can feel like we're just one drop in the sea, but I read this thing, and I think I put it on my social media. It was like, I'm just one person, said 8 billion people, right? And so if we all say it, like, we have to understand that we are all part of this. And even as one person, if you don't think that your voice is making a difference, it's definitely not going to make a difference if you don't use it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, we have to. There was a question that came through Aysha, that says, do you think that there's been an increase in the prevalence of youth in the justice system after the mass stay at home that occurred in 2020 from COVID?
All I can do is look at the most recent crime stats. So over here we're a bit behind. They don't publish that year's worth of stats. It takes another year. So we've got the 2023-2024 stats, and we had 59,000 children arrested. We had nearly I think it was 8,300 first-time entrants. I'm just looking at some of the stats here. We had 660 in custody, and that was an increase of 21%. And it's the first increase in 10 years. So if again thinking about the delay of when the crime was committed, for how long it took to come through the criminal justice system, that may have been the fallout of the 2020 COVID situation. And the reoffending rate of children increased for a second consecutive year to 32.5%. So it has increased. Whether or not we can say that's down to COVID is another matter. I was still busy. We still worked. We were frontline. So we still worked throughout, and I was still going to police stations and courts. Police maybe weren't out as much. So I think that maybe not as much crime was being detected. And obviously people were at home. So there wasn't any group gatherings, which, as we know, can sometimes lead to crime. So I don't have the actual facts of it. But I know that certain rates did go up for the year of 23-24, which again, from arrest to conviction, that would have been through the COVID time. But it was different type of offending during that time because, as I say, our liberty was restricted, so different crimes occurred. You had an increase of domestic violence. So maybe more in terms of adults, but youths weren't allowed to gather, they weren't allowed to be out, so it was harder. But then that's why a lot of the online stuff took place, and that's where the mental health was significantly destroyed basically during COVID, because they didn't have nothing else to do, so they went online, and that's where a lot of the danger was.
Yeah, I just had a quick look at an article study that was done based on the US. So it says that self-reported youth crime, which self-reports are questionable because obviously you're not always going to tell the truth, that it said down, but that decline ties back to less going out. So alcohol use, cannabis use, going out and partying went down. Official juvenile arrests and court cases also fell sharply, but violent crime increased. So when we talk about the things like homicides, non-fatal violent victimization, and the homicide rates, which tells us that these negative, like you were saying, directly back to mental health and maybe what they were experiencing in the home during that time when everyone had to stay home, is that those violent crimes are coming out more, and they're typically the crimes that are harsher punishments and sentences are catered to. And so it's telling us that things like property crime and things like robbery or maybe attempted robbery might be falling, but things that are really pertinent, carrying weapons, maybe we've got situations where children just aren't coping. The mental health is still, I know myself, I am so much more socially awkward now after staying home all that time, and being out in public places makes me anxious. And so for somebody that is suffering from mental health, their reactions to certain situations aren't going to be the same that they were, and so they might be out of proportion to the risk and fear. And it's being mentioned here as well, and the increase of online bullying and decline in social skills upon return to school. So all of that is so relevant, that coping, that maturity, that loss of ability to connect, and a lot of us have, I think, are still in that disconnect stage. We've come back together a little bit, but I feel like a lot of the things that were implemented during COVID have stuck around. Like, we don't have to leave the house. Amazon is next day. We connect on things like Snapchat, things like Facebook, things like Instagram, and kids are gaming and so on and so forth, and they're not going out and spending as much time together. But that also means that when they do, those skills aren't being regularly practiced. So I think that that's super interesting to note that that, and not just related to COVID, but, you know, significant events in the home. Like you said, domestic violence, what a child's experiencing in the home is going to shape how they react in circumstances and outside of the home.
Also, obviously, drugs was massively effective during COVID because people couldn't get their drugs. So what we found was that people were buying in bulk. So there were massive bulk buys, but there was less supply issues because no one's on the street really selling because they couldn't because everyone had curfews and stuff. But like you say, but then you have the addicts that are not getting their fix. So when they're not getting their fix, they then are withdrawing, and that leads to the violence, the deregulation, to the violence, to the mental health. So drugs was a big issue in COVID, whether it's for the negative or the worse, who knows? Like you say, it just the crime changed. So there was less drugs involved, but more violence.
And the financial stress. I mean, a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people experienced financial issues within the home that they didn't have before. A lot of, especially here in Australia, like we still have situations where people are living in their cars with their families because they just can't bounce back from what happened during COVID and losing, you know, we had stay-at-home orders where children weren't able to go to school. I had to quit my method of work to be at home with my child. Like, and so I'm a single parent. And so how am I going to afford to pay my bills? You know, like if I didn't have family support or other methods to work from home, which a lot of people don't, that then draws us to things like crime or illegitimate ways of obtaining that. So it is such a intertwined web of issues. But I think what you're doing is so powerful. And I think, you know, like we were saying, even though a lot of our community is from the US, it signifies how valid it is based on what people are saying in here, you know, and how they can share and resonate with what you're saying, because it's not just the UK, it's not just Australia, it is not just like, I mean, other places in Europe have it a little bit, they seem to have a little bit more worked out than the rest of us, and I don't know what book they're reading from or what manual they got to do what they're doing in places like Scandinavia and Norway, but man, they were doing some extraordinary things over there. But I wanted to let everyone know that I have shared the petition and Aysha's Instagram in the chat. Keep in mind that as a non-UK resident, you cannot sign the petition, but you can share. So remember, you know, your shares do go out to your environments and your communities. And even if you know people that are within that community, please share it. Please, you know, follow what Aysha is doing. Aysha is doing on Instagram. Be part of the conversation. The more that you interact and the more that you share, the more that Aysha's information and what she's doing is going to get put into the hands of the right people. So it is in the chat. It is also in the event. Every signature, every share helps build momentum.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much, everyone watching.
Absolutely.
Very much.
Absolutely.
And Aysha, we want to thank you for sharing your experiences and insights with us tonight. This conversation just reminds us how important it is to reach young people before they enter the justice system.
Absolutely. Is there anything that you wanted to say before we thank everyone, Aysha?
No, thank you to both of you and for the work that you do as well. My journey has introduced so many amazing people. All these little pockets of people that are doing amazing work. It just frustrates me that the government can't see all this and actually take the lead. It takes all of us individuals to come together to do something. But that's
100%. And thank you for staying up until after midnight to talk to us.
Yes.
Yeah, that's who
I was saying when we had connection issues before, I was like, Sarah, she looks good for midnight. I do not look that good at midnight.
I've never got dressed after midnight for a very long time. I was in my pajamas.
I would be like, what did you say? What did you say? To everyone that's tuned in and watched and interacted, thank you for being part of this. If you know someone who'd make a great guest for Break the Cycle, Rewrite the Narrative in the lives that we host, reach out to us. We are always looking to highlight new voices and perspectives.
We'll wrap it up here, but keep the chat going. Sign the petition. Again, as Kirsten said, even though you may not be a UK resident, sharing it, you may be able to reach multiple other UK residents just by your network of people. Share the replay, and most of all, let's keep building these conversations together. And until next time, thank you for joining us.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.